What's going on, everybody? My name is C4. Welcome back to the channel. And today, 3 days away from the first round of the 2025 NFL Draft. Quick plug, I will be doing my yearly live stream during the first round on Thursday night. So bring the cold ones, bring the salads. We're going to have a great time. I'm going to be able to live react with you guys for all your favorite teams' picks. And I'm sure the Eagles fans and myself that are going to be tuning in, there's no way we're going to sit there for 5 hours and wait till Philadelphia's pick at 32 of the first round to have them trade out. There's no way that's going to happen. We're going to have a reaction, good or bad. Let's manifest it. Let's put that out into the world. But what we're going to do here today, on Tuesday, is I'm going to do my final dream 7-round Philadelphia Eagles mock draft. Here we're going to go what I would do given however this board breaks down. But I'm also going to try to talk about different options that I would love in that scenario, just to kind of give you guys an idea of my guys. I've been posting updates like that over on my second channel, More C4. Go check that out. I've been breaking down targets I'd love the Philadelphia Eagles to go after. But here we will put that information and my favorite players in mock draft format. Tomorrow's video will be a predictive mock draft, not a mock draft where what I would do, but I'm going to try to guess and see how many picks we can get right in tomorrow's mock draft as it relates to the first round of the 2025 NFL Draft. Not to pat myself on the back, I've done pretty well over the years. I'm usually into the high teens, low 20s trying to guess this stuff, so hopefully that continues next season and we'll have a good time. For this mock draft, I am going to resist trades. I like trades. Trades are realistic. When you have a general manager like Howie Roseman, trades are very realistic. However, there's no amount of trading in these mock drafts that will overcome the amount of comments that will likely be you're cheesing the system. There's no way that guy falls. I'd rather not. I'd rather just go with the mock draft sim as it falls, deal with the situations as they arise. So without further ado, for our Philadelphia Eagles at pick 32, let's get going. There is 0.0% chance that this team is going to trade up into the top 10. But I think once we get outside of the top 10, I've heard some beat reporters, some guys that are insiders. I believe it was Daniel Jeremiah that said, watch for Philly if they're going to be aggressive. And I think Philadelphia, with our day 2, day 3 picks that we've kind of acquired over the next couple seasons, they could be moving them a little bit. I think this is going to be a draft class that a lot of teams are going to want to move down. And from the vibe, from the word on the street, a player that Philly could take a big swing to try to trade up and get could very well be Jalen Walker out of Georgia. Hybrid player, very interesting skill set. Now, they haven't brought him in for like a visit or anything like that, but if you believe the rumors, he would be a guy that Philly would have to absolutely trade up into the top 12, likely to select him. I don't really think like Mykel Williams would interest the Eagles too much at this stage. Someone like Shamar Stewart as well. Depending on how high Jahad Campbell is, that's a guy that I personally like, but Philly hasn't brought him in for a visit, so there's just not a lot of strong vibes there. The other two trade candidates, which we'll go as we get through it, I think Malachi Starks could be one. Philly brought him in for a visit. I also think Walter Nolan could be one who Philly brought in for a visit. Walter Nolan's probably my, I don't want to say necessarily dream pick, but if we find a way, regardless of what the cost is for us to trade up, to leave this first round with Walter Nolan on the Eagles, be it he falls to 32 because of character concerns and everything, or we got to move up a couple spots, I think I'd be very happy. And the most happy, maybe, with that situation. But we're going to keep on going here. A lot of these guys are going to start ripping off the board very, very quickly. Let's get into the 20s. I'll tell you right now, if Jalen Walker falls to 19, Howie Roseman would be making a call, but we're still looking good. I'm not going to hide the fact that at 32, with no trades, I would love a Starks or Nolan, but a lot of times, man, these guys get gobbled up these next couple picks. Denver goes McMillan. We get Hampton going to the Steelers. Chargers get Loveland. Green Bay goes Kelvin Banks. It's actually a pretty good roll. I guarantee here you're going to see Walter Nolan go to the Vikings. Wow. Houston could go Walter Nolan? Wow. This is a great roll so far. Because right now, if this is the board, as much as, Josh Simmons is another interesting one. I think if you're going to draft Josh Simmons with the injury concern, you'd have to bring him for a visit. Philly did not do that. But this is a dream mock draft. This is taking the board as it falls mock draft with players that I like. Shamar Stewart, Malachi Starks, Josh Simmons, Walter Nolan. You could live with that if that's your board. Hell, Philly's done a lot of homework on Maxwell Hairston as well. And I've invested into the fact that if we decide we want to get him at 32, with Vic Fangio hitting on Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean, if he sees the same traits in Maxwell Hairston, you'd be kidding yourselves if you weren't like, yeah, we'll go get that guy for you, Vic. So we have the Rams go Josh Connerly. Baltimore at 27 go Shamar Stewart. Okay, we're going to have a good roll here. Detroit goes Tyleek Williams. The Commanders select Maxwell Hairston, you bastard. I mean, they like an undersized SEC corner. Manuel Forbes did not work out super hot for them. We have Buffalo selecting Golden. Kansas City. Go Malachi. Hey, that makes it easy on us. There's no debate. That almost would be a perfect situation. If you told me at the asset of the first round, Philly's looking at one pick till we pick, and Malachi Starks and Walter Nolan. Now you have a dilemma. Now you have like your what if is going to exist. If you go Malachi Starks and Walter Nolan becomes an All-Pro, you're going to go, well, God damn it. Or vice versa. If we go Malachi Starks and everyone's like, why would you go safety? We don't value safety, and then you watch Walter Nolan. You know what I'm saying? Thank you, Kansas City, is what I'm trying to say, for eliminating any which bit of tension to that pick, because now it's clear as day. At 32, we did our homework. Only way Walter Nolan does fall this far is due to the off the fields. So we're going, yes, sir. Thank you very much. Walter Nolan, 32. Him on the defensive line to come in, and essentially it's going to be him and Moro Ojomo that need to come in and replace Milton Williams. Yep, that'll do. And that's not going to be the last time I go after an interior lineman. I'll tell you that right now. But Walter Nolan, former 5-star, absolute beast. Him and Jalen Carter on the same defensive line is absolutely terrifying. I would pick 64. This is an interesting one. Philly had a late visit with Kevin Winston, the safety from Penn State, who I think if he didn't have an injury last year would be a lot higher than 75. You have Jacob Parrish as the top corner. Philly's done a lot of homework on him as well. I'm a fan. He is, if I had to throw a comp for Eagles fan, he's kind of like Avonte Maddox, like a versatile DB, can play nickel, can play outside. I think he can play safety with how well he is as a tackler. I don't think, though, corners that, like, the big thing is like corners, edge rush, right? But like that's also where we took our flyers. We got Adoree Jackson, Keely Ringo, Eli Ricks at corner. Honestly, you throw Parrish in there. I'm not necessarily putting Parrish out ahead of any of those guys. That's just adding more competition to a camp. Is that what you want to get at 64? At safety, you have Winston coming in off an injury, sure. But you have Sidney Brown, who I think a lot of us want to be cautiously optimistic. They're like, he's going to be a dude for us at safety. I'm going to play with Reed Blankenship. So I do think I would value safety more than DB, all things equal. Linebacker's an interesting spot. There's just not a lot of value there, but I do think the long-term health of Nakobe Dean, when and if he's going to be ready, linebacker should be a need for the Philadelphia Eagles, and if they do want to address that position, go more pro-ready than not, because we need someone that can compete in training camp for that starting position. Tight end, Mason Taylor's probably the dream pick at 64, but the more this draft process goes on, the more of these mock draft simulators go. He's gone well before 64. So if we're looking at secondary targets at tight end, I mean, we're always going to be connected with Harold Fanning because we got Bowling Green's head coach from last year where Harold Fanning literally broke records at tight end. He's our new quarterback coach. However, the impending Dallas Goedert trade for the Philadelphia Eagles, Fanning is absolutely in no way, shape, or form a replacement for Dallas Goedert. I think if you want a Dallas Goedert replacement, Terrace Ferguson is an interesting option. My favorite one that I've been very public is Jalen Connors, and I would be fine probably waiting there. He's one of my steals. So I think with Mason Taylor off the board, he would be my favorite tight end. I think we can wait a little bit. So then you look at tackles. I think if Ursery doesn't go to Kansas City, I'm saying the Chiefs getting Ursery and Malachi Starks in this scenario, if that happened in real life, pretty livid because those are two guys that they likely sniped off the Philadelphia Eagles draft board. Ursery would be a very interesting option for a tackle that's great athlete, fits the parameters. Like Philly wants 9+ RAS tackles, even higher than that, like a 9.5 RAS. And I think at 330 pounds, he absolutely could also play a little bit of guard, compete for that right guard spot, which needs to be, in my opinion, a mandatory option. If Philly's drafting a tackle or lineman early, they need to be able to compete for that guard spot like a Mekhi Becton did last season. So the value for me right now is at edge rusher, where we have JT Tuimaleau and Braden Swinson, two guys that I really like. But if I'm going to be honest with you, I think based off of how Howie Roseman likes to value players, based off of the pedigree, JT Tuimaleau, former 5-star recruit, played in a lot of big games, did a lot of winning at Ohio State. That's going to be my selection there. Now, I personally probably have Swinson a little bit higher, but because Swinson's been a little bit of a one-year wonder at LSU, JT Tuimaleau maybe would be viewed in this situation as a little bit safer of a pick. And I think this still sticks with the philosophy that you build through the trenches. That's just what Howie Roseman does. Now moving on to pick 96. This is a tough one. This is a dream Philadelphia Eagles mock draft, but I can't help but also, as a tiebreaker, use players they've shown interest in. At 96, I love Terrence Ferguson there. Really do. But, again, I really, really like Jalen Connors, and I know that he will be available, likely with our 5th round picks. At safety, I'm very interested by Kevin Winston. I also really like Makuba, but Philly has shown interest in Kevin Winston. If you don't go Winston at safety, you'd have to wait like Malachi Moore, potentially a little bit. Jalen Reed's another safety they've shown interest in out of Penn State. I'll be honest, though. If Philly does trade Dallas Goedert, looking at what we have on the roster with this value, as much as I love Jalen Connors, I think Terrence Ferguson would have to be the selection here. Big-time athlete. We just need that weapon at tight end. Is Grant Calcaterra going to be that weapon? Is Kylan Granson ever going to be that weapon? How about we get a Terrence Ferguson, a guy with a tight end with a 40-inch vertical that runs a 4.6 at 6'6", and can do some of the things that Dallas Goedert does. Big enough, willing enough of a blocker. You don't really get anything in far as blocking with Kylan Granson and Grant Calcaterra. You need an athlete that can take some of those screen passes that Dallas Goedert thrives on to the house. Terrence Ferguson can do that. Just to factually show how well he tested at the combine, what kind of athlete a Terrence Ferguson is. And I think if you are going to go with the very risky decision of trading away Dallas Goedert because of monetary reasons or whatever, with no clear cut, that's our successor in place, being able to land an athlete like this with the type of ceiling that he has in the 3rd round, at least would give you some sense of optimism. That's like, all right, you know, Grant Calcaterra got a little chemistry going with Jalen Hurts last season. We know Calcaterra as a receiver has shown some promise. And then we have Terrence Ferguson, big-time athlete, guy that you could probably even line up big slot every now and again, but an explosive playmaker that is a true successor to moving on from Dallas Goedert. So now we're into the fun picks. 4th and 5th round where it's just, let's just take some shots. And for the Philadelphia Eagles, not a great role. I've done a lot of mock drafts, and a lot of times there's a couple more desirable players for the Philadelphia Eagles. I would say if this is the board right now, I would start at 134 by getting Holland Pierce. Now, not my favorite Jeff Stoutland candidate. However, he is 6'8" with an 88-inch wingspan. That is absolutely absurd. And when we've heard Howie Roseman talk about guys that he likes to look for to enroll in Stoutland U, they are guys that have the it factor, like unteachable traits. And that is exactly what you get in Holland Pierce. You cannot teach 6'8". You cannot teach an 88-inch wingspan. He was like a 450-pound walk-on at Rutgers. Left Rutgers as an all-conference player. Don't know necessarily the freak athleticism. Like, I think he's just, like, big. Like, it's not fair to say, oh, he's going to be the next Jordan Mailata, because Jordan Mailata is 6'8", 350, and he's a very great athlete. Don't necessarily know. Pierce did not test. I assume that probably masks some certain areas, but seems to have decent footwork for a gigantic human being, which is a parameter to enter Stoutland U. But when you have literally unheard of wingspan, that is the kind of guy that if Stoutland can coach you up from technique, there is an outstanding developmental tackle for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, maybe 4th round, a little rich, but Stoutland U, you can never be too rich if you get the right player. And I think Pierce could be someone that is a lot of interest to Jeff Stoutland. Next up at 161, I'm going to go Malachi Moore, safety from Alabama. It's buying the dip. We've talked about that for free agency for the Philadelphia Eagles, getting your Adoree Jacksons, getting your Ojulari, Azeez Ojulari, like Uches. You get guys that have had peaks and are kind of on the dip again, expecting that now being in a winning environment is going to bring the best football. And I think Malachi Moore at safety a couple years ago was a star. Like, literally, that was his position for Nick Saban in Alabama. Like, he was supposed to be the next Minkah Fitzpatrick. Then you had a couple moving pieces. He moved around the defense a little bit. Brian Burns came to town. Yada, yada, yada. Malachi Moore. He's going to get drafted. But a couple years ago, he looked like he was going to be a 1st rounder, 2nd round pick in this class. And I feel like buying the dip. The pedigree makes sense. Highly recruited, Alabama, winning program, winning history. Those are all things Howie Roseman likes to look for. And I think the versatility for Malachi Moore. I think the fact that he's a perfect fit for a Vic Fangio defense. He's a DB that likes to tackle, doesn't miss a whole lot of tackles, has had some good production as a ball hawk, can play within structure, which is something that Vic Fangio likes to look for. I think he would be a great addition and adding much needed depth to our secondary. And especially the more you can do, we got our as much as Avonte Maddox was kind of washed and people were groaning and walking on the field, there was a lot of value in what Maddox brought because he could play pretty much every spot in the secondary. I think we need a little bit more of that right now. That's an area of depth that we don't currently have, I think, in our secondary. We have a lot of guys that are kind of just outside guys, and someone like Malachi Moore's versatility would bring a lot of value. I think we're going to view Holland Pierce at 134 as, like, at best where he could be is, like, our swing tackle next season. But he also could end up being, like, an expensive, like, hopefully we can throw him on the practice squad and no one steals him. Which, again, 4th-round pick, I think he might stay on as a swing tackle. But we now need to at least add some competition to the depth of the interior of the offensive line. And what I like to look at is Garrett Dellinger from LSU. I know I'm going to get a not great grade from this site, but he is everything Philadelphia likes to look for in these late round linemen. Athletically speaking, a 9.76 RAS. Philly, I've kind of done a little digging outside of just big RAS, big athletes. That's what we like. But the kind of common denominator is the explosion grade tends to be very high. In particular, the broad jump. And Dellinger absolutely ticks off a lot of those boxes. The fact that he played pretty much everywhere across the line at LSU. I honestly thought, watched a little bit of Jaden Daniels a year ago, that Dellinger was, now he had a couple rough plays. You know, you watch Walter Nolan, if you're looking at Walter Nolan cut-ups, the game against LSU kind of took Dellinger to the woodshed a little bit. But I thought at times Dellinger was the standout lineman on this LSU offensive line. That included Will Campbell, who's likely going in the top 10 picks of this draft. So I think there's absolutely a player there. I think the versatility alone was going to get him drafted. But then putting up these numbers at the LSU Pro Day, I am very intrigued about having him potentially be a new enrollee at Stoutland U. Final 2 picks of the draft. I do think we need to find a linebacker. I think Nakobe Dean's uncertainty makes things slightly concerning, as much as it'd be a great story if Jeremiah Trotter Jr. wins the other linebacker spot next to Zach Bond. That'd be a great story, but I don't think you just hand that position to it. So I'm looking for linebackers late in the draft. Nick Martin out of Oklahoma State, who kind of went viral for a linebacker. He basically tracked down Xavier Worley, fastest 40-yard dash in a play, which I thought was very impressive. Athletically, I like what I see. Very similar size and build to Nakobe Dean. But unlike Nakobe Dean, like Nakobe Dean's like, you know, instincts is what got him there. Dog mentality is what got him there. Nakobe Dean, not a great athlete. That's kind of why he fell to the Philadelphia Eagles. Nick Martin, while undersized, 26 reps on the bench press, 4.53 in the 40-yard dash, elite explosive grade. Like, these are the kind of guys you love. At best, this guy catches on and can add something to the mix for the linebacker competition for that LB2 next to Zach Bond. At worst, this is the kind of guy you absolutely can keep on the back end of your roster to have him probably compete with like Ben Van Summeren for special teams role, linebacker role. Hopefully Van Summeren's a little bit more fullbacky, kind of hybrid there a little bit, but just, you know, for how Nick Martin can make the roster, special teams ability, that is absolutely a guy that would thrive on special teams, and I think there's enough linebacking ability that he could certainly make things a little interesting come training camp and preseason for that starting linebacker spot, and that's great value getting that in the 5th round. And now finishing up the draft at 168, I think the value right now, we're looking at corner. Phillies brought in Justin Wally from Minnesota. Seems like an interesting, kind of gives me like Isaiah Rodgers vibes. That'd be interesting. I really do like Jordan Hancock, but he's, you know, you bring him in, he's clearly just going to be a backup to Cooper DeJean, which, yeah, I don't know. Maybe if they don't love their nickel depth, they could consider that. You know, if you want to keep going linemen, like Vincent ticks a lot of boxes. Caleb Rogers ticks a lot of athletic boxes that Philly likes to look for in linemen. I love Jalen Connors, even though we have a lot of depth at tight end now, especially investing pick 96 at Terrence Ferguson. I'm a big fan of Connors, so if we go a little heavy at tight end and end up getting rid of some of those veterans and going with rookie contract guys, I could live with it. Wide receiver is an interesting position. Isaac Tisla from Arkansas, like 6'4", 9 some RAS, like insane athletic profile, if that's something you want to do. But I think Philadelphia with Johnny Wilson, they just signed Terrace Marshall. And Jahan Dotson wants more of a role. I think Philly might be okay at the wide receiver position. And looking at everything, I think running back is where there's value. You look at the Eagles right now, I'm not as high on A.J. Dillon as others. I feel A.J. Dillon's much more likely to be a Rashad Penny, like the Devin White this year, like where he has some name value. I don't know, because of like fantasy football or, a couple peak years as the smash to Aaron Jones's dash in Green Bay. But Ollie Gordon, buying the dip, right? Malachi Moore, buying the dip. Ollie Gordon 2 years ago was the best running back in college football, arguably. And then last year, the expectations going into last year was like, he's going to be a Heisman frontrunner. Didn't have the best year at Oklahoma State. Had some off-the-field stuff. That could be a prime buying the dip candidate. If we can get a guy that, let's be honest. If Saquon gets a certain thing, where he's on the picture of certain thing, whether you believe in curses or not, I think this year is an incredibly important year for the Philadelphia Eagles to have depth at running back. Love Will Shipley, not a believer in A.J. Dillon, but he's there. I don't think A.J. Dillon's enough, though, to look at this and say, well, we got Ollie Gordon and we got Jaden Blue. Jaden Blue, legit low 4.3 speed at running back, kind of explosiveness. That's why we're going to go. I'm going to go the tiebreaker there. I think him or Ollie Gordon, if that's the board, I would even say Jarquez Hunter or Rocket Sanders would also be running backs. Like, sign me up. I don't want ETN. And I think Howie Roseman will value ETN being a coward and leaving Howie Roseman and my Florida Gators to go to the other guys. I think he'll hold that against him. But there are a lot of running backs at 168 that I think that could arguably be outstanding value. You have LaQuint Allen from Syracuse, looking at Dane Brugler's mock draft. He was an Eagles super fan growing up. He's a guy I could get behind. Watched him a couple times. I have a couple tweets literally saying, who's this Allen guy from Syracuse? Watching him play. He's a beast. So a lot of interesting running back options late, but I think Philly has shown interest in Jaden Blue, and that is speed that you can always use more of the offense, and I think I would be fairly content with him being the running back, all things equal, with those names with that final pick. So there you go, fellas. That is my dream Philadelphia Eagles 7-round mock draft. Well, operating within this mock draft scenario, I'd say we did a pretty good job. I think in hindsight, if we decide not to go tight end here at 96 and say maybe 164, I get Jalen Connors at tight end. We can address a different position there. That'd be a little more interesting. Holland Pierce is not my favorite tackle to potentially enter Stoutland U. There's more athletes like Jalen Travis would be an awesome get. I kind of already did a breakdown. I broke down 10 linemen that I think would be perfect candidates for Stoutland U over on my second channel. You can go check that out. But Holland Pierce, given what was left, I think that would be something that would be very interesting if Stoutland kind of gave an auto approval. Like, I think I can make that guy into something. But ultimately, I like the draft. Love to hear what you guys think about it, especially Eagle fans, in the comment section below. We'll be back tomorrow with a predictive mock draft. And then on Thursday, our first round live stream, which is going to be fun. I don't live stream much, so I'm sure there's going to be hilarious hiccups. You guys can come and laugh at me. So hope I see you guys then. Thank you very much for watching. If it's your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. And until next time, it's your boy C4 saying peace. I love you. Have a good one.